gentlemen. I remind councillors that all those that are in the chamber, that your image and what you say may be broadcast live to the public, so please be mindful of your actions and your comments. You should avoid making statements that might defame or offend, and note that a recording of this meeting will be retained online and in council's archives. Please turn your mobile phones off or switch to silent. Filming and photography are not permitted in the chamber. Anyone observed to be filming the meeting may be asked to leave. I would like to remind councillors to turn their microphones on before speaking and off again when no longer addressing council. I now declare at 6:01 meeting open. A warm welcome to everyone in the gallery and those watching along the home. We've now got three in the gallery. Welcome. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we live, work and play. We pay our respects to the Darkinjung country and elders past and present. We recognise the continued connection to these lands and waterways and extend this acknowledgement to the homelands and stories of those who also call this place home. We recognise our future leaders and the shared responsibility to care for and protect our place and people. I note that Councillor John McNamara has submitted an apology for tonight's meeting as he is overseas. Councillor McNamara declared his apology at the 25th of February 2025 Ordinary Council meeting and subsequently submitted his apology in writing to Council. Procedural motion to allow councillors to attend remotely. A request has been received from both Councillor Stanton and Councillor Walsh to attend this meeting by audio-visual link in accordance with clause 6.21 of the Code of Meeting Practice. I note that in accordance with clause 6.24 of the Code of Meeting Practice, Councillor Stanton and Walsh are entitled to vote on this item. Can I get a mover? Councillor Wright, seconder. Councillor Smith, all those in favour? Yeah, sorry, I couldn't see your hand. Unanimous, thank you. Item 1.1, disclosures of interest. I will now ask each councillor to disclose any conflict of interest they might have in the items on tonight's agenda. Firstly, myself, I can confirm that I do not have any conflicts of interest. Councillor Milland?
No conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Councillor Daniels?
Nothing to declare.
Councillor McGregor?
No in conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Castles?
No, nothing to declare.
Councillor Crowley?
Nothing to note, thank you.
Councillor Walsh?
No conflict.
Yeah, you get it.
Councillor Walsh, could you say that again, please?
I'm sorry.
That's
no
it.
conflicts.
Thank you. Councillor Neil? Any conflicts? Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Nothing to declare. Yeah.
Councillor Lamont?
Nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Eaton?
No, nothing.
Councillor Stanton?
Nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Wright?
Nothing to declare either, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McQuaid?
Nothing to declare.
Thank you. First item on the agenda tonight is item 2.1, matter laid on the table, matter arising from proposal to establish committees of council. I now have a motion that the council lift this matter from the table in order to recommence debate. Can I have a mover? Councillor Milland, a seconder. Councillor Wright. All those in favour? Councillor Neil, are you in favour as well? Thank you. Unanimous, thanks. Councillor Lamont?
Just wondering if I could, if it's the right time to actually put a question through you to the Director of Corporate Services.
Yeah. Where's-
Okay, I just want to know if committees can be considered council-supported precinct committees. A number of us did actually write emails regarding having precincts, but they were never actually offered to any of the councillors at the workshop. So I'm just wondering why, and can we go back and look at council-supported precincts?
Yes, what you said is correct. What we dealt with at the workshops and what is the subject of this report are council standing committees. Precinct committees, I would assume, would have members of the community on them, and therefore they would be classed as advisory committees. As indicated in the report and at the workshops, the subcommittees would be dealt with at a further stage once the committees are established, and that's the intention of this report. That said, there's nothing that stops a notice of motion coming to council at any stage to deal with those items. However, the subject matter of the report is specifically the standing committees, and as precinct committees are not standing committees, they're not included.
Can we actually get a report on the possibility of council actually running council-supported precincts committees in that case?
Yes, we can. We would be intending to look at formats for establishing advisory committees, which is what a precinct committee would be, and the terms of reference, if adopted tonight, for each of the standing committees includes provision for those advisory committees, including precinct committees, to be established.
Councillor Rayton?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a amendment to the motion that is before us with some minor changes. If I can try and run through those. So if we're looking at the membership, community and culture, Councillor McWade has advised that he doesn't wish to take as chair. And so if we could note that Councillor Castles would be the chair, and Councillor McWade would be the deputy chair. In respect of Economic Development Committee, you, Mr. Mayor, have advised you didn't want to be deputy, so Councillor Smith has indicated that she would like to be deputy. In relation to environment and planning, Councillor Walsh as deputy. What have I missed? In relation to governance and finance, Councillor McGregor as deputy. I think I've got that right. Have I missed one? Oh, sorry, infrastructure. Councillor Neal as deputy, I think. Is that right? Have I got that right? Thank you. So just with those minor changes, Mr. Mayor.
Any other discussion?
There's a couple of little things that you've done in there that need to be tidied up by working through the motion on the screen. The first thing is Councillor Smith on the Economic Development Committee was an alternate and now becomes a member. Do you intend to extend the size of the Economic Development Committee to accommodate Councillor Smith, or does somebody else go on to take that place? And
No, we can add her to the committee.
Yeah. So if we were going to look at that, I'd just suggest we work our way through each one of them,
Yep.
or the council, and understand exactly what you're voting on.
Sorry, Councillor Lamont. Councillor Rayton, can you just switch off a second?
Sorry, yes.
No.
Can we just scroll through these a bit slower, just so you can
Yeah.
actually see, because there's been some changes. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that they're just trying to sort it out. Yep.
Environment and Planning, it's Councillor Castles, I think, is deputy. Oh, sorry, Councillor Walsh. I got it wrong. Councillor Walsh, wasn't it? I need some help here, Councillor Neal. With Councillor Walsh, wasn't it, as a deputy? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes. Yep. Thank you. Yep, that's right.
Is that?
Yep.
Councillor Beaton, is that
Yes.
to your satisfaction?
Yes. Thank you.
Councillor Neil, Councillor Beaton, can you put off your microphone?
It's just a tidying up on the Community and Culture Committee. B and A should be swapped, and Walsh should. Yeah, it's still there. That's good.
If I could also say, if there's some general consensus on this, you probably should put at the bottom that this motion supersedes the selection of chairpersons at the ordinary meeting of the 25th. Yeah.
Did Councillor Neil, you've just your buzzers on. Councillor McGregor.
Can we just go through them again just to make sure they've all been changed? Because I don't think we got to some of the committees. So, number one's community and culture, so that's been changed. Number two, yep, and infrastructure has been changed as well. So underneath that, was there a couple of other committees? There's more than 3 committees. Where are the other ones? Governance and finance. Yeah, that one hasn't been done. So there's no deputy chair listed for governance and finance. It was, yeah. Wouldn't want to get left off the list. And did we have the change for the economics committee as well, included in the resolution? I think that was the last one of the committees, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's still with me as deputy mayor. Yeah, that's to be changed. Who comes in as deputy chair? Councillor Smith, was it? Councillor Lamont.
Thank you. Can I just actually get my name removed from all the committees? I'm probably an alternate on most of them, but I just feel like this has been probably one of the most undemocratic processes that I've been through. The chairs are mainly being taken up by the Liberal Party. Councillors here, and with very little option for anyone else to take any position of chair. And it's been a bit of a fight for, I think, Margot to get her position as chair in the committee. And yeah, I'd just prefer to be removed from the committees. If we have precincts, which is what the community actually wants, I'll definitely be part of that.
All right, Councillor Lamont, did you get that? To remove Councillor Lamont? Can I have seconded Councillor Wright?
Just work through it all and make sure we're all comfortable.
So everybody's comfortable, councillors? Councillor McGregor.
If Councillor Lamont is leaving the committee, I would like to attend that committee as a delegate rather than an alternate, if that frees up a spot.
That's acceptable.
On number 2 to the minute clerks, you've just got alternate 1 and alternate 3. So
Councillor Eaton. You just get a buzzer on. All right, so everybody's been through and yes, so put the amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment. I'd like to add a part 7 that the CEO bring back a report on precinct committees, the establishment of precinct committees, to the May meeting, please.
It has to be a foreshadowed amendment because this is an amendment.
Well, the mover might accept my amendment. Who is the mover?
Councillor Eaton.
No, I think it's outside of the scope of this, because remember, this was part of establishing the committees. So this is already, it's like this, a motion arising. I can't see how it could be even moved as foreshadowed, because it's outside the scope of the matter before council. It can clearly be moved as a notice of motion to the next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I will foreshadow it then, knowing that this won't get to that stage. But yeah, let's give it a go.
Have you got a seconder?
no, it doesn't need it.
Don't need it? Don't need it?
Doesn't need a seconder.
So, all right, all those in favour? The foreshadowed.
No, you voted. You're voting
Sorry.
on the
Sorry.
amendment, Councillor Eaton's amendment.
So, all in favour of the amendment? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Neal, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McQuaid, Councillor Councillor Walsh and Councillor Stanton. All those against? Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, carried. So now we'll go, the amendment becomes the motion. All those in favour of the...
Councillor Smith now gets to move
Lovely.
foreshadowed amendment.
Oh, okay, good. So I will move, is that with the bulk of that resolution? No, the thing went through. I don't get to foreshadow.
No, what happened was you foreshadowed an amendment.
Yep.
The amendment became the motion. So you now
yes.
can move an amendment on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So I will move my amendment, which is that motion with a part 7, that the CEO bring back a report on precinct committees to the May meeting, including the variations on precinct committees, if I could. And if I have a seconder, I'll just speak to that briefly. Thank you.
Second, please, Councillor Lamont. Yep, second is Councillor Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it is good to see the committees being established. Feel a bit dirty about all the wheeling and dealing that's been going on that I wasn't a part of. But it's nice to have standing committees coming into force. But it would be even nicer if we engage the community in having a say on those matters that are of concern to them in our community, and precinct committees could be a valuable way of doing that. I think there are a number of different versions of precinct committees, some where council supports them, but they are pretty much wholly run by community, and some where council plays a role in those precinct committees. So I would like to get an understanding of that and a report coming back to that May meeting that councillors can consider. And just a question through you, Mr Mayor, to the CEO. Is the 355 committees, does that still exist, or did that get... That still exists, so that is one version of those precinct committees, is that correct? So if we can make sure that that is included in the report. Thank you.
A 355 committee is a committee you establish to undertake the functions of a council. Most 355 committees manage something like a community hall or a local tennis courts or something like that.
Have some information, that would be great, included in that report. Thank you.
Councillor McGregor.
Look, I rise to support the amendment before us of Councillor Smith and Lamont. Obviously, it's unlikely that we are going to seek to get this report to establish the precinct committees today. However, in my mind and the mind of many of the other people here, the precinct committees are a pressing issue for this council. The majority of people who were elected to this council stood on a platform of having precinct committees. Some of our community's most vibrant organisations across this entirety of the Central Coast are formally recognised precinct committees that, after all the degradation and destruction that this amalgamation has caused, still managed to survive, to continue to strengthen themselves and be a true voice for the community in the areas they represent. You've got them across the coast. The Arimba group is a very strong group in my ward. We often hear envious tales of the Copacabana group from our right-wing friends over there. They're quite an active group. You've got the Point Clare Coolawong group, which is another one in the West Ward. We're across 3 of the 5 wards here. The Gas Pig up in the north is also a very active group in the Wyong Ward. And whilst I'm not as familiar with the community organisations in the Entrance Ward, there are various community groups who are very active on the issue of dredging. And there was a forum that was held by, I think, the Chittaway group during the election that was attended by probably about 70 or 80 people at a conservative head count, if not more. The entire centre was filled out. The difference with the precinct committee to some of these other options that are before you is that it directly involves the residents that live in that area. And if you have a proper precinct structure, the council is accountable to them insofar as that councillors and council staff attend these meetings to directly respond to the issues the community raise. They don't have to funnel them up or bubble them up through the people that have been elected in this room. You're not having 15 people talk about something. You're having, and it's not elected people, it's just ordinary people bringing their concerns through a well-organised executive of volunteers who aren't paid to do it, who are very passionate and have a lot of expertise and experience in it. My actions and words in this chamber are very much guided by my belief in the principle of maximum democracy and direct democracy, which is a principle of local government that goes back to the old Balmain Council, some of the inner city councils in Sydney, where there was people like Nick Origlass who put forward that ordinary working class people are the custodians here who should be the ones who are represented in the chamber. And if they themselves are not elected to the chamber, there should be bodies and organs that directly reflect the will of the community that live in the area that they're in. They shouldn't have to wait for phone calls, emails, or meetings with us and then going through notices of motions and questions on notice and committee reports. They should be able to just turn up and say, this is what I care about, this is my problem, I'm here, help me, let's fix it together. And democracy should be practiced on that level. What we see in here is not democracy, it's stage managed. We need to get in and amongst the people in the community, listen to them and actually do with our words and our actions what they want us to do. And in order to do that, we need to establish these committees. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Walsh, did you have your hand up to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to also speak in favour of this amendment and in also supporting Councillor McGregor in what he has just said. I was one of the councillors who wrote to Director Reclamara regarding my, strong belief built on many years of experience in the community sector, that having the community involved, in fact driving the work that needs to be done in the community, is in fact the most effective democratic way of achieving good results for the community, results that they want. That precinct committees are a wonderful opportunity not to be missed in terms of the work that they do being by the committee, by the community and of the community, and participatory community participation and participatory theory shows really clearly that the participation, high participation rates and contribution rates of community being listened to, being heard, will provide the most effective outcomes for councils. So I certainly support this approach.
Thanks, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Castles?
Yes, again, certainly during our election campaign, we certainly stood on re-establishing precinct committees. I totally support this point 7. I think it's going to make a big difference. I'm looking forward to seeing the report coming back to the meeting. We really need to be listening to community voices, as we know, and certainly in my position as chair of the Community and Culture Committee, I will be ensuring wherever possible that we look at ways of involving the community through subcommittees, advisory groups, etc., so that they can be part of the process to actually have good decisions made based on community input and expertise. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Castles. Councillor McWade?
Obviously, speaking against the motion, Mr. Mayor, and I just wanted noted on the public record that is my recollection, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but we sat around as a group of 15 councillors who are the representatives of the Central Coast, who were all voted in a workshop on a Saturday over a number of weekends, and worked together to come up with all these committees. Now, if certain people want to come into the chamber and discredit that system that the staff come up with, well, that's fine, that's their prerogative. But we have come up with a fair, not just we, but us 15 with staff have come up with a fair and reasonable system of committees. And we're coming to this agreement now, and I think that's only fair for the public, and the public can raise their concerns and issues through any number of committees that are already set up.
Thanks, Councillor McQuaid. Councillor Lamont?
Councillor McWade, do you think it's fair that the chair on all committees turns out to be a Liberal councillor? Sorry, if I can ask Councillor McWade through the Mayor that question. Is it fair that the chair of the committees turn out to be Liberal councillors?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to your point, Councillor Lamont, they're not all Liberal councillors as chairs. I note that I, in fairness, gave up my position that was voted on last meeting to Councillor Castles, who I'm sure will do a fantastic job.
Right. Councillor Smith?
Mr. Mayor, could I just clarify the wording a little bit, just to get that correct? And if I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to the CEO or the director, just it says next ordinary meeting, which obviously it's not going to be March, but would April give sufficient time for a report to come back to council on that?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that the close-off for reports is this Friday, so it's unlikely to present anything that's well researched. So yeah, sort of April or May, but we'll probably get you something up to April.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. So is that clear enough, what is written there, in terms of the intent of looking at the options for what a precinct committee might be? And if I could just insert the words establishing, I don't know whether this is right, but geographically based precinct committees, which is just without trying to get into debate with Councillor McWade, but that's a distinct difference between the standing committees we've just established. So there'd be geographically based precinct committees.
You would need to talk to the mover and the seconder, and you're the mover or the seconder?
I'm the mover.
You're the mover.
I'll talk to
But you
myself.
need to get your seconder on board. But look, I think it would be useful if you were reasonably broad, because there's a range of options in this space. Certainly my experience has been large precinct committees, that there are some significant challenges with that.
Yeah.
And sometimes levering of existing community-based organisations is very powerful. And
Okay.
how that works. Yeah.
Happy to leave it open, but happy to leave it open as long as that's understood by the staff that it's a broad question that's being asked, not a narrow question. Thank you.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to address Councillor McWade's comments. My recollection of the workshop was Councillor McNamara offering to do an Excel and fill it with the names of people's interests in terms of committees. There was certainly nothing mentioned about decisions being made about chairs of committees, and to then receive that information where the names had been exported and decided on in terms of membership of committee, and then and I acknowledge that it was also based on the material from the workshop day. So the interests were clearly identified. However, there was certainly no democratic decision made about how chairs would even be decided, let alone just one group deciding it and one group getting chair of every committee. I think that having, in terms of the concept of wrangling about getting anybody other than the Liberal Party acknowledged as a chair of a committee, having 1 out of 5, it's not exactly balanced. And I recognise that given Councillor Castle's immense community service experience that she has specifically here on the Central Coast, she will make an excellent chair of that Community and Culture Committee, and I look forward to being involved with her on that, and other councillors as well. But the idea that there was anything fair about the decisions regarding who would be chairs of the committees, Councillor McWade, is a farce.
Okay. Although Councillor McWade. No, can't speak twice. All those in favour of the amendment?
It's Councillor Smith's amendment.
Councillor Smith's amendment. Councillor McKenna, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Wright. All those against? Councillor Eaton, Councillor McWade, and I think Councillor Stanton, did you vote for or against? And I forgot to look.
I voted for, but you didn't call my
Thank
name.
you. Councillor Stanton voted for. So the amendment's been carried. Amendment becomes the motion, and all those in favour of Councillor Smith's motion? Councillor Neal? Yeah. And unanimous. Thank you. Next item on agenda is item 2.2, matter laid on the table, consultation on reforms to the council meeting practices.
I'll move that it be taken
Councillor
off the
Eaton.
table. I'll just move to take me off the table.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Councillor Neal. Thank you. Councillor Eaton. Yeah, oh, sorry.
No, it's been moved and seconded. It needs to be, it's a procedural motion, no debate.
All those in favour?
This is just the procedural matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Councillor Wright, are you up? Or, yep. And yep. Unanimous. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready when you are.
Councillor Neal.
I wish to move the recommendation that's before us with the amendments that have been circulated with some changes. And in doing so, I do wish to apologise to the Director of Corporate Services because she has put a lot of work into this submission, and I feel that the way this has been dealt with 2 meetings and some lost documents today has made that difficult for us, so I do apologise. There's a document that has been circulated.
Councillor Neil, is this as an amendment?
I'm moving the report that's been provided as a recommendation with these amendments.
There is a motion before the chair by Councillor Wright and Councillor Smith, which recommends the submission to the office. So what you are moving?
I was not aware. I understood that motion lapsed.
All that happens when you lay a matter on the table is the debate is suspended, and now you pick it up at exactly the same point.
I'm happy to move it as an amendment to the recommendation.
That's perfect. And you need a seconder.
Can I have a seconder for Councillor Neil?
Just before there is a number of changes.
Maybe she doesn't need a seconder until she explains what it is.
This document is not actually the document that I sent. Okay. It's not as onerous as it appears. I will be removing some of them. There is a section that was headed in my document, enhancing the authority of the mayor, and which was just there. If we can roll down a little bit, please. If we can move further down the amendment, that would be great. Sorry, further down to the subsections. Sorry. Mr. Mayor, if we could go back to that document with the numbers on it, but we could just roll down so I can see the bottom of the document, that would be of assistance. So the section where it says amend the first sentence. I had it a few moments ago. Yes, so if we can remove the section headed enhancing the authority of the mayor, that section can be removed. And the section requiring councillors to stand when a councillor addresses the meeting, that can be removed. And providing as a default that councillors are to attend in person, that can be removed from the amendment, please. Thank you. As you can see, the amendments that I'm moving are not substantially different from the initial recommendation. Did you wish to seek a seconder before I speak?
Yep. Have we got a seconder? No seconder.
We're done for the caucus.
Councillor Castle's seconder.
The differences are relatively minor. The main change is that the original recommendation on our submission said that we didn't support, was somewhat confusing actually, that we did not support the removal of the briefings. I think the submission actually referred to private briefings. It is my personal view that on the basis of transparency and engagement with the community, that all briefings and meetings should be open to the public. And as a result, I have deleted the first section and the last section, which says contrary to that. The remainder of the submission has minor changes as to meaning, and I would proceed to commend the amendments to the councillors as we discussed it at the workshop earlier this month or late last month.
Councillor Wright.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Neal, the reason this item is laying on the table is because last meeting this went up on the screen and councillors hadn't seen all of the amendments in detail. Councillor Neal, prior to this going on the screen, had you circulated a marked up copy as suggested with all councillors?
What I did was actually sent it
Hold on, Councillor Lamont. Thanks.
with the expectation that it would be circulated. I understand that because I sent it to not a personal, but a work individual email rather than the civic support, it was overlooked, so it was not circulated.
Councillor Lamont.
I was under the impression that the deadline for this report was 28th February.
So just on that, the report, it got extended. Council got it extended and it's actually due tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So there were an extension given to council and it's actually due first thing this morning. First thing tomorrow morning. Councillor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, like Councillor Wright, perhaps, I'm just having trouble understanding from looking at what's on the screen what we're actually putting in the submission. Are all the changes basically on the screen, Councillor Neal?
All the changes are.
Okay. With your indulgence, and don't want this to take very long, but can I just get an understanding of what each of those is meaning? So when it says remove pre-meeting councillor briefings and it says be deleted, does that mean our submission is supporting pre-council meeting briefings or not supporting pre-meeting councillor briefings?
It means that...
Just yes or no is fine. Are we supporting them or are we not supporting them?
We are supporting them.
Okay, the next one, requiring information considered at closed meetings to be made public, and we've got delete the first sentence and retain the second paragraph. So are we supporting information at closed meetings being made public or not? Yes or no?
No, it's not like that. It's basically saying that information, if it's confidential, if at a later time it is no longer confidential, then it should be available to the public.
Okay.
And
Just explain in those two sentences, is that okay, Mr. Mayor and Mr. CEO? Because I can't vote for it unless I know what we're actually putting in the submission.
okay.
Quite frankly. Yeah.
So those were the first two sections that I just spoke about then. The enhancing the authority of the mayor is about the capacity of the mayor to requisition a meeting, and essentially the changes there don't change the meeting, the sense of that section, in that we do not support the changes to the mayor being able to requisition a meeting.
So just on that, so we don't support the draft document that says the mayor can call the meeting all by himself?
Exactly.
Correct. Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that. In terms of the standing to address the meeting, that's not changed. I think that's in fact... In the original submission, put as a draft before us in the recommendation, we did not support it and we continue to do so. The last section only again reiterates our support for the pre-meeting briefings, but with the community allowed to listen in.
Councillor Eaton, you had your buzzer on earlier. Was you want to speak?
Oh, just briefly, Mr. Mayor. I mean, like I suppose Councillor Smith and Councillor Wright, I can't support this. I don't understand what the changes are, and given it's got to come be tomorrow, I'll be supporting the motion that's before the floor.
All right. No more speakers. All those in favour of the amendment? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor McQuaid. All those against? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor, you're abstaining, so that's a no. And Councillor Stanton. The amendment is carried. All those in
To vote against. So let's just check the numbers. Is it 8-7? Okay. No. We only got 14. So what are the numbers? Councillor Wright is an against. That's 6. 8-6. Yeah.
So the amendment becomes a motion. All those in favour of the amendment, the motion? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Neal, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor McWade and Councillor Walsh. All those carried. All those against was Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Wright and Councillor Stanton. Yep, thank you. And the motion is carried up for Councillor Smith. Thank you. Next item on agenda is item 2.3, status update on council resolutions.
Clear the recommendations.
Thanks, Councillor Eaton. Do you have a seconder? Councillor McGregor, thank you. Councillor Lamont?
Yeah, I just have a question, if that's okay. It's in regards to record number on the report, D16531693, entry into aviation services lease for a helicopter hub over part of the Central Coast Airport, Warnervale. I just want to know what is actually going on with that.
I understand Council is still undertaking due diligence investigations. Just to be clear, there is a delegation to me to finalise that matter that was put in place because it may well have been finalised between Christmas and when Council met again. It would be intended, if we were in a position to make a definitive decision on that matter, that matter would be referred back to Council.
There was actually a rescission motion on that, so I think quite a few of councillors here are under the impression that all action would actually stop on that motion with the rescission.
Well, that's wrong. A rescission motion is only stops the action of a council if it's actually delivered at the meeting in which the specific motion was passed, under the Code of Meeting Practice and under the legislation. So a rescission motion doesn't halt the action, and in fact the legislation says the role of the General Manager is to enact without undue delay the lawful decisions of the Council. So just to be clear, a rescission motion can only stop the decision of the Council if the rescission motion is put on and lodged before the conclusion of the meeting at which the substantive motion is passed.
Thank you. Any other discussion? No? All those in favour?
Mr. Mayor, just sorry, before, could we just ask through you to the CEO to provide some written clarification of that? Because that's not my recollection of some of the information that we've been given at various points in time. Don't disbelieve the CEO, but would just like a written clarification about rescission motions and what action staff can continue with when a rescission motion is in train, please.
I'll just send you the relevant section of the legislation, which is repeated in the Code of Meeting Practice.
All right, putting the vote. All those in favour? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Neal, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McQuaid, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Stanton. Carried unanimous. Thank you. Next item on agenda is item 2.4, Community Support Grant Programme. I note that this report was resolved by the exception at the 25th of February 2025 ordinary meeting. It was included in tonight's agenda as an oversight. I will now move the motion on the screen, which Council reconfirms the motion that was resolved on the 25th of Feb 2025. Do you have a seconder? Councillor McGregor. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Notice of motion, item 3.1, notice of motion, establishment of catchment to Coast Advisory Committee, submitted by Councillor Lamont. Councillor Lamont, you want to move it?
Yeah. Yes, I'll move it.
Give a seconder. Councillor Smith. Councillor Lamont.
Thank you. I move this motion to re-establish the Catchment to Coast Advisory Committee because it's a long-standing and essential committee that has played a critical role in managing and protecting the region's waterways, estuaries and coastal areas. The committee has a proven track record of providing expert advice, engaging the community and guiding council's decision on environmental matters, and it must be reinstated in its current form, in its established previous form. The The Catchment to Coast Advisory Committee takes an integrated approach addressing floodplain management, estuary health, water quality and coastal sustainability together, rather than isolation. Creating a separate flood committee would fragment this work, whereas the Catchment to Coast Advisory Committee already manages these issues effectively. Another major strength of the committee is its ability to provide genuine community engagement. The committee has always included community representatives, environmental experts and key stakeholders, allowing council to hear from those with real knowledge and lived experience of our catchment and coastline. This level of direct input from the community ensures transparency and better decision making with oversight, community oversight, something that would be lost if these discussions were only held within the broader council committees. The Central Coast is facing increasing environmental challenges from climate change impacts and coastal erosion to rising flood risks and water quality concerns. We need a dedicated, independent advisory body to guide our response to these challenges, not a diluted subcommittee with competing priorities. Reinstating the Catchment to Coast Advisory Committee is about protecting our environment, ensuring community input and making smart long-term decisions for our region. This committee has existed before and has been highly effective in delivering sound advice and practical solutions. There is no reason to replace or reduce its influence. I urge my fellow councillors to support this motion to resurrect the Catchment to Coast Advisory Committee as a special purpose committee reporting directly to council, and ensure that we continue to prioritise the health of our waterways, coastline and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ian.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move an amendment which I did send through to the ladies. Hopefully they have it. It's very brief, so I can read it out. I have my laptop supposedly fixed today. Now I can't save Word documents to it. Okay, the council refer. Oh, there it is. Yes, thank you. So I'll need a seconder if I'm to speak to it. Councillor
Wright seconds the amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And councillors, I draw your attention to the CEO's response, which rightfully sets out that we've just gone through the process of establishing standing committees. And the idea with that is that then subcommittees and advisory committees, such as proposed by Councillor Lamont, would then report to the standing committees. So this is actually flies in the face of what we have just voted on tonight. I'm not opposed to the committee. Clearly, the amendment refers to the council supporting it. It's just going about it in the correct manner. And I don't think I need to say any more than that. It's just we are going through this process of setting up committees so we can then set up advisory committees and subcommittees. And unfortunately, Councillor Lamont, while well-intentioned, has got the horse before the cart. So the first act, I think, of the Environment Committee would be to set up this sort of committee and possibly the committee in the next notice of motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Layton. Councillor Lamont.
Yep.
Councillor Lamont, can you put your buzzer on? Councillor Neil.
We have gone and spent quite some time looking at the committees, but I think there is never a wrong time for a good idea. Clearly, this is an area where there is a lot of controversy and concern in the community, and that can be indicated by the level of discussion about a number of issues, but particularly Wamberal Beach. And I think that it's probably the only concern I have is that maybe we should have done that at the first day we met rather than waited till now. But I do congratulate Councillor Lamont on putting this motion forward. I don't think there's any inconsistency between the committee structure that we have created and forming this committee that can then report to the Environment Committee in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Lamont.
The Catchment Coast Committee actually survived for how long without any standing committees? I mean, council has never had standing committees from my recollection.
Councillor Lamont, just you have to speak to the amendment or you're actually closing.
Well, I'm speaking in opposition to the amendment.
Right, thank you.
Would you like me to continue?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. As I said, we didn't have standing committees before. The Catchment Coast Advisory Committee was a standalone advisory committee that reported straight to council. I don't think it needs to be part of any standing committee. It can run on its own just as it has for many, many years.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question through you to the staff. Could I just get some clarification? It used to be the case that as part of developing the catchment plans or the coast and estuary management plans, there was a requirement to establish a committee. Could I just clarify if that is still the case?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is my understanding. It needs to, for the catchment management plans, need to go through some form of committee, and this committee would satisfy that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could speak against Councillor Eaton's amendment, I'm sure he may argue that that's not inconsistent with the information the Director just provided. However, it does make it extremely difficult for us to fulfil that obligation in terms of timeliness, in terms of composition of that committee, and in terms of the role of that committee in advising and contributing to the development of those plans. And they are ongoing at the moment. So I think time is of the essence when it's my understanding that council staff are already out there doing a level of consultation on some of those plans. It also, unfortunately, standing committees, despite my concerns about the process and the horse trading, should be perform an important role to council, but they should not be a barrier to other committees providing advice directly to the council. Standing committees should not be a gateway that seeks to deprive the community and deprive those committees of valuable information and valuable input to council's deliberation and processes. So I'm speaking against the amendment, and I hope the councillors will support or not support the amendment and support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Also put the Councillor Eaton and Councillor Wright's amendment. All those in favour? So Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McQuaid, Councillor Stanton. All those against? Councillor McKenna, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Neil, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Walsh. Yeah, got you, Sean. And that's, is that 7?
It's defeated. It's 8-6.
Yep. Okay, so the amendment is lost. So now
Yes.
I did.
The amendment is lost.
The amendment is lost. And now that.
Yeah, move to the motion.
Yeah. Back to the original motion. All those in favour? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neil, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Wright, Councillor McQuaid, Councillor Stanton, and Councillor, I've said Walsh already. Carried. Councillor Castles, yeah. Right, so the next item on the agenda. Item 3.2, notice of motion, establishment of advisory committee regarding Mangrove Mountain landfill, submitted by Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move the motion. There was just some minor tweaking of wording. I think it was in part 3. And it was on matters relating to the Upper Arimba Creek catchment, including but not limited to. I think that was the change. And I did consult with the staff on that. So is that? Appreciate your advice, Mr. Loader.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's just a couple of more minor changes to A, which would, instead of say site, 3A, sorry, short, medium, long-term management of the catchment.
Thank you. Yep.
And same at the end of B. I think the rest is fine.
Thank you, Mr. Loader. So I'll move that motion. If I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will just speak to this. As we all know, Mangrove Mountain landfill has been a long-standing and complex issue. It was initially about the use of waste fill to remodel Mangrove Mountain Golf Course. Ultimately, this became much bigger, a much larger scale of waste fill, also bringing in concerns about lack of oversight by the former Gosford Council and agencies, lack of response from authorities to concerns raised by community members, and the risk of pollution in our drinking water catchment. Importantly, it was the persistence and campaigns of local community members and community organisations over many years that led to action. I can recall the first time a community member identified a milky colour in the creek at the bottom of Arimba, and it was traced up to the landfill. And that was actually by Wyong Council staff assisting. Many community people have spent countless hours on this issue, lobbying governments at all levels and of all persuasions to act. Our Central Coast community owes them a debt of gratitude for their efforts. Eventually, both Council and the New South Wales Government moved to turn this issue around through legal avenues and, of course, have had some success. In 2018, The Council resolved to establish a Mangrove Mountain and Spencer Advisory Committee. That committee ensured that there was transparency, open communication, and that this issue remained a priority for Central Coast Council. The future of the landfill continues, and not just the landfill, but other issues in terms of the management of that catchment requires Council's attention. It is a matter of great interest to our Central Coast community. There is ownership, local knowledge and expertise that adds value to these processes. Of course, recent media from Council about water quality and PFAS in the Ourimbah catchment highlights the need for attention to the health of our drinking water catchment. The prevention notice issued by the EPA only a couple of weeks ago again highlights that there are issues that need urgent attention. I encourage my fellow councillors to support this motion, not to delay it, not to try and hide it behind a standing committee, but allow it to go forward so that this matter can be progressed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Can I have a second? Oh, we've got a second, Councillor Mon. Oh, sorry. Any other speakers? No? No other speakers? So all those in favour?
Sorry.
Councillor McQuaid.
Sorry. Is it possible, I'm speaking for it, to remove, just so we don't get pigeonholed, B? Remember we spoke about that, Councillor?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Just all wards, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. Just Councillor McGregor.
Do you want indication of who the interested councillors are at this moment, or do you want that to come back to council?
Look, I'm happy to talk to the director about this process. The rest of this committee and maybe rather than spend a whole lot of time now, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO or to the director. The process of establishing this committee, we don't need to finalise that right here and now.
What we'd probably do is do a report back up, finalise it. Well, unless you want to delegate.
No, that's okay.
Unless you want to move a matter arising to delegate to me to finalise it, or to the.
Definitely
well, it's got to be to me, unfortunately. I'm the only person you can give it to. Somebody else will get the job, but.
All right, if we can bring it back to the next meeting, I'd realise as a late report, that would be great.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. All those in favour? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Millen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Wright, Councillor McQuaid, Councillor Stanton, and against is Councillor Eaton, so carried. Next item on agenda is item 3.3, notice of motion, council's income generating assets, submitted by Councillor Wright. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight I move a motion that calls on Central Coast Council to initiate a review into all of their income generating assets. Yeah, Councillor Mott said she would.
Thanks, Councillor.
Let me restart. I was too eager. Mr. Mayor, tonight I move a motion that calls on Central Coast Council to initiate a review into all of their income generating assets. Examples of this include Central Coast Stadium and Lake Haven Cinema. What is important to note is that this is not about cuts to services. It is about looking at ways to draw in extra revenue. It is about opportunities for our community, increasing transparency, and setting us up for the future. The stadium is a great example of this, as it has a lot of potential. In just 4 major sporting events last year, it drew in almost 75,000 fans and delivered a $9.75 million boost in economic activity for the region. That includes people dining at local restaurants or having a beer at the pub before the game with their family and friends. Economic activity like this is what helps communities thrive. Our community, particularly young people, are wanting more opportunities to get out and about. Improving return on investment for council and providing greater opportunity and recreational aspects is a win-win for everyone here on the Central Coast. We also know that at an investment level, interest rate cuts are going to be a big impact. While they are great for mortgage holders, they are not always friendly for larger, more institutional investors such as councils. When you look at just the floating rate notices allocation within our investment portfolio, their interest rate is down roughly $25,000 in February compared to January alone. This means getting the real assets piece of the portfolio right is critical to our overall investment return. We're only 6 months into the new council, and it was only 6 months ago that we were under administration. Now is the time to be thinking about the future and the legacy that we want to leave for the next generation. There is no reason this should not receive bipartisan support. I know that councillors have had a month to look at this, and I thank councillors Lamont and Smith for their input on this important motion. I support the suggestion put forward by the CEO about splitting this up into 2 briefings. This has been incorporated into the motion already. Councillors, this is an important opportunity for us all to work together and think about the financial platform we want and need and how that can propel us into the future. Thank you.
Please, security. Councillor Lamont.
Yeah, I just want to, I'm going to take a slightly different view to Trent. Sorry, not Trent, Councillor Rice. I agree with everything that you've said, but I think after being in administration for 4 years, we definitely need the oversight and all of our assets, regardless of whether they're the Gosford Bowling Club, Warnervale Airport, need to be re-examined openly by the councillors and transparently so the community knows what is actually happening. So I do support the motion. These assets belong to the people, and we can't wait until a lease is up or something comes before council to actually become familiar with what's going on with these assets. It's our job going forward with long-term financials to be able to assess the viability of all of these, regardless of what they are. Bowling club, airport, swimming pools, cinemas, we need to know, and the community needs to know what council has as their assets, and we need to be open and transparent about how well they're doing and whether what action should be taken going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I wish to speak to the motion, and I wish to raise a few points to foreshadow where this is going. So some of these things we may have been presented with some information on the term of this council, other ones we may not have. I want people to consider this. As a request for information, I have no opposition to anyone's request for any information. But consider what happens with this information. So if you look at the way that this is sort of shaping up, this is going to lead to service cuts, things being sold, asset recycling, as some people like to term it. This is privatisation. There is a view within this chamber from some that corporate welfare is what the Central Coast needs, and that government money should be used for private gain. Now, that concerns me, and it concerns me greatly. Whilst it's important that some aspects of council are profitable and that council is sustainable financially, we need to consider how council views the general public and the community. There was a lot of talk under administration about the stakeholders and the shareholders of the Central Coast, while you were treated like a cash cow. You were told you were stupid, you didn't know what you were doing. We had this great administrator in here who was going to fix everything. All he did was pull back on the capital, sack hundreds of people, and just cut back for a few years, take out huge loans against the advice of the State Solicitor General that were entirely unnecessary, and you paid for it. And you're going to keep paying for his mistakes for decades to come. And the reason why our long-term financial plan puts us into structural deficit is because of the direct decisions that were made and the choices that were made by that man. Now, we need to look at how we make this organisation sustainable in the future. As a request for information, I have no problem with that. But why are we only looking at the profitable ones? Last council meeting, we had people in this room advocating that we spend up to $80 million of public money on something that's not going to make a profit for 75 years. Who's going to do that in the private sector? So if that's the kind of leadership we've got, it really leads me to question where we're going to be in 4 years' time. Well, that's right, we're going to be in structural deficit after 2 years of pork barrelling before the next council election. Where do you think that pork barrelling is going to come from? It's going to come from your rates, and it's going to come from selling off all this stuff. People who have been around a while know that there have been plans in the past to jettison our assets. The Gosford swimming pool, sell it off, let the developers have fun with that. Central Coast Stadium, let's give it to the state government. They'll do such a better job. Are they really doing a better job since they've got a hold of it? The Peninsula Leisure Centre. Why aren't we talking about why the North doesn't have their own version of this? Because I can remember 7 years ago, we were sitting around in budget meetings talking about having a leisure centre for the North, fully paid for with developer contributions, and it hasn't happened. And people were sitting there at that time saying, we were talking about this 7 years beforehand. We've got to focus on what matters to people. Why a council is running a cinema is beyond me, particularly given, some of the information that's out there about that. There are things that we have to do because we have a legislative responsibility to do it. There are also things that we do because we have a commitment to public service to do it. But when it comes to making things profitable, who are the people that pay? It's the punters who use the facility. So it might be great for you to make a whole lot more money out of it, but if we put all the tickets up to these things by $20, it's a bit of supply and demand. You know that whole market thing that you would have learned about in Micro 101? If the prices are too high, you lose the people going to it. Supply and demand, it's a fundamental part of economics. So whilst I said repeatedly, happy for the information, make no mistake, the decisions that are made with motions like these lead to job cuts, to service cuts, to people having a real bad financial impact themselves because your rates are going up. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis created through 40 years of terrible government policy around housing and around tax, which have made our nation one of the most unaffordable places to live, and you want to put the price up to send the kids to the swimming pool. Have a think about where this stuff goes. And when you're in the media, have a think about the 6, 12, 10-year impact of some of these decisions that are made today. Because whilst it all seems warm and fuzzy and councillors, there's no reason why anyone could vote against getting information on this. When stuff gets sold off, people get sacked, and your rates go up, it goes back to these sort of decisions being made on the fly by inexperienced people who either have no conception of the impact on our community or they have a very good deal of understanding of where it is, and they won't come out and be honest about it. Because the position of this council financially is not strong. It is not stable. It is not secure for a long time. And when we sit in our budget meetings and you get people talking about sacking people and service cuts and flogging stuff off, and they come in with these fluffy motions, it makes you wonder, what is the real agenda? Where's the wolf in the sheep's clothing? They're sitting in this chamber.
Councillor Lamont.
Thank you. Totally agree with Councillor McGregor as well, and Councillor Wright. And Councillor Wright knows that this motion actually originated from me, to actually examine the assets that we shouldn't be actually supporting. Originally, it was to actually look at the cinema and the airport, and then we sort of broadened it. Because you can't sort of look at two and not say, look at all of them. I know there's people been talking about cutting childcare services, which could be political suicide for a few people, even talking about it. I think it's time to actually look at everything. I think we've all got common sense here and know what means the most to the community. And it's at this stage with some of the assets that we're holding, like the cinema and the airport, I don't think it's those assets. But at least we'll have a chance to have a look and do it publicly with the community.
Thanks, Councillor Lamont. Any further discussion?
Yes, there is, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Neal.
I think it is very important that we are fully aware of what our assets and the costs of maintaining them are. This group of items listed here in number 1 is a really mixed bag. Items like the Lake Haven Cinema is probably something that is probably not the core business of the council, and is certainly not a community asset or service. But certainly I would never, ever consider jeopardising the operation of the Peninsula Leisure Centre or the Gosford swimming pool, which in my mind are the core business of this council. So I certainly support obtaining further information, but I do put councillors on notice and the community at large that I will not be selling off or reducing the services that we presently provide in those very important services. But we can always do better in the way we manage them, and the only way that we can do better is to be aware of the information and how they are operate. So with that that rider on it, I intend to support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Neil. Councillor Wright? Yeah, would you like to close? Councillor Neil.
Microphone's not that hard, Belinda. While I do appreciate Councillor McGregor's comment that I'm inexperienced in these motions are light and fluffy, I do want to point out a few points. I do appreciate that Councillor McGregor and I come from different ends of the political spectrum from an ideological standpoint. So firstly, this motion does not just look at profitable assets. I'm not sure where that was taken from. A lot of these, as Councillor McGregor knows, actually aren't running at a profit. Look, I agree. Ratepayer money must work for ratepayers, and I think ratepayers should have full transparency. I know Councillor McGregor was one of those councillors who signed the transparency pledge. So we can't isolate things and say council shouldn't be in the cinema business, so we just won't look at it. We won't bring it up. These assets should be looked at, and any decisions from a community perspective will come back to council. There is a fantasisation in the community at the moment that this motion, of all things, is tied to swimming pool charges. I haven't made any comments about swimming pool charges, nor have I made any comments at any point about, filling the coffers of the private sector, as Mr. McGregor stated that I did. And again, this is about transparency. A well-run council, the last council went to administration. A well-run council must be looking at its whole asset book. That's absolutely pivotal. That is your bonds, that is your real assets like these, and you need to be making appropriate decisions. Lake Haven Cinema is a great example of that, and that's definitely something that we'll touch on in future. It's like, what do you do with that asset for the ratepayers? Can you put more money into it and it makes money? That requires financial modelling. And I know I'm unexperienced according to Councillor McGregor, but this is what you do when you model assets. If we put more money into it, will we get more money out? If not, you need to have a look at that as well. So I think it's good to see that councillors are supportive of this motion, because realistically, if we're going to be here for the next 4 years, we need to know exactly what's in our asset book. We need to know exactly how it's performing. We need to know what it's doing. We need to know what plans and arrangements have been made. Are there any external stakeholders? And point C, when Councillor McGregor spoke about childcare, some of these have community and strategic benefits. We've heard that council's childcare portfolio is running at a loss. It's not a profitable service, but that doesn't mean we have to cut it. These are, to the point there in point C, community and strategic benefits that we have to weigh up, and we have to do this for everything, because again, ratepayer money must work for ratepayers. What they put in, they should be getting what they want out of it. So, as councillors, as 15 representatives from across the community, when these reviews come through, each one will have to be gone through line by line. That's what it takes. Councillors don't always get the opportunity to make the light and fluffy decisions, as Councillor McGregor put it. Some of these may be hard calls, but if they're in the best interest of the community, that's something we should be doing. So starting with transparency and accountability is great. I don't know if Councillor McGregor was aware of the $25,000 loss from interest rate, lack of interest rate return last month. But how do we budget for that? Where do we get more money from? We need to be looking at opportunities to, for economic activity to build on these assets. So these are opportunities for ratepayers. As I said in my speech, these provide social objectives for people. It's more people getting out and about. It's not necessarily about increasing charges, but look at Central Coast Stadium. How often do you see a major event on there? I remember, in 2018, I think we had Lionel Richie there, and everyone loved it. It was the talk of the town. Why do we have musicians going from Sydney to the Hunter Valley and not doing a Gosford show? Well, there you go. Use the stadium. How good's that? So these are things we need to think about. This is economic opportunities, it's transparency, and it's good financial management. Thank you.
I just wish to ask a question to clarify the motion, Mr. Mayor. It's I'm just
The
not
motion,
certain
he
whether.
closed, we asked for closure.
No, I'm not debating. I'm seeking clarification on the motion before I vote on it. Are garbage tips intended to be included as they are income generating facilities?
Put off your buzzer, please.
Thank you. Look, when I was envisaging this motion, it is something that I took to the election saying that I want to have all of these in. When I was thinking about that, garbage tips wasn't necessarily something I thought about. If garbage tips are something you want in there, happy to make sure they're included.
Asking you what is included in your motion. Are garbage tips included or not?
They're not excluded, but what I want to do is see how much information council can actually bring to us. As you know, we have hundreds of income generating assets. I want to see them bring forward as many as they can.
All right. All those in favour of the motion? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Moreland, Councillor Daniels, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McQuaid, Councillor Stanton. Unanimous. Thank you. Next item on agenda is item 3.4, notice of motion, simplified development approval pathways for events, submitted by Councillor McQuaid. Councillor McQuaid, are you moving the motion? Councillor Moreland, seconder. Councillor McQuaid.
As an inexperienced councillor, as pointed out by Councillor McGregor, I have no idea how I'm going to follow on from your theatrical speech. You don't just speak. You perform. You take the stage. You ignite the room. Every speech is a standing ovation. Every word is a spotlight.
Councillor McQuaid, can you speak about the
to the motion? This motion proposes build on the recognition of the Central Coast is uniquely positioned to become a dynamic event destination. Our region's assets and strengths have long been celebrated, yet our current approval process has been a barrier to unlocking the full potential of events that could drive economic growth and community engagement. As I established whilst looking into this matter, Council is currently developing a draft event strategy. This strategy is designed to better leverage our local assets by streamlining approval processes, investing in key event infrastructure, and fostering a collaborative approach that supports leisure, sports, and business events. Such events not only encourage overnight stays and boost our local visitor economy, but also nurture a vibrant and proud community, both in a business and entrepreneurial sense, but also a local sense. Historically, temporary events held on the coast or council-owned or controlled land were able to bypass the lengthy development consent process. Thanks to exemptions included in the Gosford Local Environmental Plan 2014. However, when the Central Coast Local Environmental Plan 22 was adopted, those exemptions were removed, placing an undue burden on event organisers with additional administrative process. This change has impacted a wide range of events, from community markets and festive celebrations to concerts and sporting activities. My motion therefore requests two key actions. First, that the CEO draft and present an event strategy that outlines actionable steps to make our region more event friendly, and second, that the CEO investigate amending the local environmental plan to reintroduce exemptions for temporary events on council land, mirroring the former provisions. This notice of motion is founded on the cultural shift we must embrace to attract business investment on the coast, and our mantra remains, we are open for business.
Thanks, Councillor McQuaid. Councillor McGregor.
Well, I'll commence by noting that, as the former speaker just identified, that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So thank you, Councillor McWade. But I will also commence, as someone with a tad more experience than others, with some questions through to staff. So my question would be to the CEO, or if appropriate, delegated to the Acting Director of Planning. This is seeking an amendment to our LEP, our 2022 LEP. So my question to you, in the plainest, simplest way, if you can answer it, would be, why was this provision not included in the LEP in 2022, which obviously underwent significant staff work in the lead up to that and a community consultation process? So why is this not currently in the 2022 LEP as it is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding at that time was that staff did pursue having that included in the 22 LEP. However, the department decided not to include it in the approved document. So it was staff's intention to have it included then, and I guess there's no guarantee that it'll go in this time, but it's certainly worth asking. And I'll also note that this was actually resolved to do this part 2 at the last meeting as part of the item. Sorry, it was 2.13, which was the submission on the cultural state environmental planning policy. It was an amendment that was made at the last council meeting to include this, that request to include that information in the LEP.
So you're saying, in effect, that this has already occurred before this notice of motion, because it was resolved at the last council meeting and the submission on the work the staff are already doing.
Well, this matter was held over from the previous meeting.
But the item 2.13 surely would have been voted on before 3.42 weeks later, would it not?
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's already done.
So yeah, that's right. This hasn't changed since this is the business paper from the last meeting.
And just in regards to the process of changing the LEP, could you give some commentary on the process for changing the LEP?
I guess in simple terms, it's similar to the planning proposal process, and we would need to seek the concurrence from the Department of Planning to have that clause included in the LEP. It would need to go through that process and be a decision for them.
So I'm unclear if you or any of your staff would be aware of it who are here tonight. But when we had the Gosford and the Wyong LEP before, there was the consolidated and the comprehensive LEP. Did the former councils have a position on that which is consistent or separate to what's in front of us here? Do we have knowledge going that far back or not?
Yeah, sorry, I'd have to take that on notice. I don't recall what the two. Are you asking if it was in the Wyong and the Gosford LEP?
Yeah, was it in the previous council's one, or was it not? I'm just trying to establish if we've got reason for why this hasn't been put in there previously in terms of a longitudinal or very short time frame, because it's just a little bit up in the air to me, particularly given that you've already got the staff report, which was trying to advocate for this position anyway, why we've got to where we are and the actual way that this sausage is made, if you understand where I'm getting at. It seems like there's a little bit of confusion with it.
Yeah, look, I'm quite confident that it was in the Gosford LEP. I'm just not sure if it was in the Wyong one. But it's certainly something that does cause staff an issue in terms of events, and having that exemption in the LEP would certainly assist, facilitate those events for the community.
What kind of issues are we talking about? Like, how much resourcing do you think would go into assessing these kind of things?
Well, it requires, it automatically triggers DA. If it's exempt, it doesn't. It gets handled under a different process. So the fact that it has to go through the development application process is the problem.
So would you consider that to be a significant?
Well, I guess if you look at it from a bigger picture issue around events per se, the challenges we have with DA applications is that quite often the site's not necessarily conducive to that type of event. There's issues with other with referral agencies such as the police or the RFS. All of those matters require extensive negotiation and work to resolve. I think what we're proposing in the event strategy, and bearing in mind it's not in my department, the event strategy, but my understanding of it is to identify parcels of land that are suitable for certain types of applications, and then hand in hand that would tie in with the provision in the LEP that would allow those to be exempt or have a blanket development consent for a range of specific uses to that. So it just streamlines the process and enables those event organisers to have some certainty around what they're proposing, and eliminate some of the I don't want to say red tape, but I guess it's red tape that they experience when they come through council.
And in your experience, in your role, has it been something that's caused a lot of agitation or angst out there in the community, or is this something that hasn't had as much as a widespread impact?
I've been in this current stint for about 5 or 6 months, and I've had at least two applications for events which have been extremely problematic.
Yeah. If you're at liberty to say, you're able to confirm what events this has impacted, or if not, happy to say, no, talk to you another time about that.
Yeah, it's probably not appropriate for me to mention those specific applications.
Fair enough. So when it comes to the provisions in our LEP, I may be incorrect, but I'm just wondering, did we look at some of our neighbouring councils or comparable councils as to what they do when it comes to these DAs for events and things like that? Do we have some comparisons to consider before we vote on this?
That work will probably sit within the event strategy itself, and as I said, that doesn't sit with my department. But I know we've looked at Lake Macquarie and a couple of other councils in terms of what they do with regards to events generally, and how they provide that facilitation for those things to happen easily. And it is through, as I mentioned earlier, identified sites, across a range of different types of events that people can basically go, well, I want to have a wedding in a park. This is the list of places I can do it, and there's some sort of either pre-approval or exemption in place for that.
All right, thanks very much.
Any other discussion? No. All those in favour? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Millen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Neal, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McQuaid, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Stanton. Against, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles and Councillor Crowley. Carried. Thank you.
I think Councillor Walsh might have a question. She's got her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually wasn't voting for that. I do apologise. I was holding my head.
All right, sorry. Can we take Councillor Walsh off?
Would have looked for all intentions to you that I was voting, but I apologise for that.
No problem, sorry. So take Councillor Walsh. She's a no. Yep, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Walsh. I'll put my glasses on the next time I'm looking at you. Last item on the agenda, item 3.5, notice of motion removal of the limit of the notice of motions at each council meeting submitted by Councillor Neal. Councillor Neal?
Yes, I move the motion standing in my name, and I move it because at the moment there is a completely arbitrary limit to the number of notices of motion that each councillor can place before this council. There are some comments from the staff in relation to a notice of motion requires some information to be provided in some liaison between the staff and the councillor about the cost of that motion. But that in itself is not an argument against this motion before you. We are all councillors that have been elected. Most of us come from a broad spectrum of backgrounds. I would say that we are all responsible adults and have a responsibility to the community, and we shouldn't be arbitrarily restricted in what we can put before the meeting. There may be some occasions where we do not believe there's a matter that requires any motion. There may be other occasions where there is more than one. And I believe that as responsible and elected representatives of the community that we should have the scope to determine that. At the moment, there have been a number of motions that have been put tonight, and I have to say that not all hugely important, but I think all added value to the debate before this council, and I think they all have added value to the interaction between the community and the council. So I think they are a demonstration that a capacity for councillors to put up more than one motion would be an advantage both to the council and the community. I commend the motion to the council.
Councillor Neil, Councillor McGregor.
Look, I rise to support Councillor Neil's notice of motion, and I thank the councillor for bringing it to the council's attention. Councillors, tonight is a perfect example of why there shouldn't be a limit on notice of motions. We've had to come back so that you could have your notices of motions voted on, and ultimately it looks like most of them, if not all of them, hopefully, will succeed. Now, in North Korea, they live under a system called juche. They live under a principle of guided or managed democracy. I'd hate to see that happen here. We started tonight talking about the concept of maximum democracy, which is an Australian one. I would like to see us actually embrace that as a spirit. No matter how insane or crazy your alt-right MAGA ideas are, or if there's some, green left communists out there that want to put things forward, if you've been elected by the public, you have a right and a responsibility in any reasonable person's mind to raise something, as long as it is lawful, as a notice of motion, just as you have a right to vote it up or down, as you're empowered to do in this chamber. This chamber should be not a vacuum of ideas, but a facilitator of ideas and a guarantor of genuine community action. We're gagged currently. We get one nom and we get one notice of motion. That might happen in other places, but it's not good enough. And people who put us here expect us to do a job, to represent their interests, to advocate and be their voice in a place that they are often excluded from, ignored, or completely cast aside. To only give us one notice of motion delays the progress of this council. It creates a combative and a bogged down quagmire culture, which is not what we should have. We should have an open culture. We're free to disagree with one another, and we're free to argue our case, and that should be a principle in a modern Western liberal democracy. But limiting us to one motion, it doesn't do that. Now, we've heard particularly from senior staff about the importance that councillors put on their notices of motion. Obviously, they're issues that are very important to councillors. You may note that I haven't actually raised any yet, but I've been pleased to support plenty of good ideas across the aisle, regardless of who's raised them. So I would strongly encourage everyone to lift this arbitrary muzzle. You are the ones who are enslaving yourselves and putting your own chains on if you leave it to one notice of motion or one quan per meeting. You can emancipate yourself. No one's more powerful in here than yourselves, in theory, councillors, although we know all the real work gets done over there and we're just window dressing. So it's really quite important on a democratic principle, on an intellectual one, or even if you just have any self-respect for yourself, to vote for this, to empower yourself, to be the voice that you believe that you need to be for your community. Maintaining the status quo, in my mind, was not what got anyone elected here. No one went out and said, isn't everything fantastic with council? We would like to see zero changes. No one got elected on that basis. Every single person, regardless of your political platform or your beliefs, stood to change something, to put forward a different course. Doesn't mean you always get your way, but you should at least be able to have your say. There is no reason for anyone to vote against this, to echo my friend over there from earlier this evening with his nod. So I would encourage this spirit of cohesion to continue and for people to vote this up. And look, there's absolutely nothing stopping anyone from laying something on the table to get into on everyone's favourite new little trend, or delaying a notice of motion to a later meeting, but you should give yourself the right to do it. Why would anyone in this chamber vote against their right to raise an issue? The other thing, councillors, what's going to start happening when people don't get to do their notices of motion? Or we have time critical things which are put before us, either externally or from the community. We're going to start having urgency motions. Look at how we get caught up with procedural debate in this chamber and the backwards and forwards over the comp. And the comp hasn't even changed yet. Wait till you've all got to stand up and, kiss the mayor's feet or whatever else Mr. Honig wants us to do after the new comp comes in. So let's try and make some things that make our lives easier and make our jobs easier and make our role more in line with what the community wants, because the role of a councillor has been denuded, it's been pulled back significantly over successive changes through local government over recent years and decades, and it's time, even in the most feeble way, that there's a little bit of pushback here, and you just give yourselves the right to move a motion at a meeting. It's all we're asking for, councillors. It's not that hard. Please support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor.
If I could just make a comment, Councillor Neal, you might want to change point 1, because this will require a change to the code of meeting practice, and that'll have to be advertised. So I don't think you can resolve, or you can't legally resolve to amend your code of meeting practice. You can resolve to advertise or to commence the process of amending. It might be better to say commence the process of amending the code of meeting practice.
Councillor Lamont, can you put off your buzzer, please?
That's
Process, yeah.
Councillor Lamont.
Yeah, I was just going to add, so councillors here know I actually put out an email to everyone which had about 6 motions on them. And that's because I only had the opportunity of raising one. Now, 2 of my motions were taken by other councillors, which could have been me, and they could have presented other ones. But they didn't. They used my motions and morphed them into their own, which I was very happy about. I'm not precious about my motions. I think we're all just here to get a job done. And as Councillor McGregor said, if there's good ideas, we should be presenting them. But those 2 extra motions, if they were mine, really didn't make a difference to us being here any longer at all. And I just think, I know there was an issue with how long we're leaving the place and everything. I think we're here to do a job, regardless of how long it takes. And if we're only given 1 opportunity per month to actually represent something that the community is giving us, that's not enough. And I know we've got an IPR framework and everything, and a lot of what we do comes out of that, but there's clients, residents, constituents that come to us with issues that might not be part of the IPR framework. And does that mean we have to wait for that to come up? That 1 motion per month is just so restrictive, and us actually bringing ideas from the community across to the council as well. So I think tonight's proven that we can do it in good time, and everything that's been put through is, I think, worked really well. So hopefully everyone does support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Lamont. Or Councillor Walsh. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it brief. Supporting the motion, supporting what Councillor Neal, Councillor McGregor and Councillor Lamont has said. Our work as councillors is on behalf of the community, and motions are either a way to support us in that role or gag us in that role. Limiting the number of motions, I believe, is restrictive to the community's voice. So, I'll be voting for the motion.
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify my motion? I've been having a look at it, and I don't believe it's necessary to put commence as the process.
Good. Could you turn your microphone off, Councillor Castles, for a second?
So I'm just saying I've re-examined the motions before me. I don't think it's necessary to say commence, because that means we'll then have to come back and do a second step. So I think leave it as amend the adopted code of meeting practice, and then put at the end of item 1 that the process as set out in the code of practice be followed. So we just do whatever is required. Sorry? I don't. If it's amended, I don't think it's necessary to say amended. That's set out.
It's a process set out in the legislation.
Yeah, yeah.
So, sorry, I've got a mint.
So that we amend the adopted code of meeting practice to remove the restriction, blah blah blah, as per the process set out in the code of meeting practice.
No, in the legislation, because
Sorry,
it's in the legislation that you have to advertise, I think, for 42 days.
Thank you for assisting with that.
Councillor Castles. Thanks, Councillor Liam. Councillor McGregor, can you... Councillor Castles.
Okay, yes, look, I guess seeking clarification through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. It does relate to point 1 about amending the adopted code of meeting practice, and possibly with the change that's now there compared to when I sort of first had my light on, it may be covered. I'm just seeking clarification whether point 1 is going to mean or not mean that there will be a delay before we can, as councillors, submit multiple noms per meeting should we have multiple noms that we wish to submit. Could I have clarification about that, please?
There will be a delay, and there'll be a delay until it's been on an exhibition. Those submissions are considered, so it'll be a couple of months.
Councillor Written.
Yeah, I've got a question to start with through you, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager. Does the PIO have anything to say about this? I know it restricted us from changing certain things, and I've got a feeling this might have been one of them.
Look, I'm not sure about the PIO. Certainly, one of the challenges we'll find is the draft model code will come in over this as well. But there's no reason that draft model code could float around for another year, or it could be Minister Hernig could rubber stamp it in the next month. So we don't know. So I don't think that's a reason to delay if the will of the council is to do something different. But in terms of the PIO. Ms. Rackamala, I'll have a look.
Well, I'll speak anyhow while she's looking it up. I don't support the motion before us. At the moment, councils can deal with 14 notices of motion in a meeting and a number of mayoral minutes. And we only have to go back to the last meeting of council, where we only got through 3/4 at best of this business paper. And then we're back here for 3 hours tonight, or no, 2 hours tonight, to finish off the business paper. As Councillor Lamont says, the existing system seems to work in the sense that if you're really desperate to get something on the paper, you ask one of your colleagues. The other thing, the benefit of experience, and I would imagine the Mayor would recall this, and Councillor Neal would recall this, every council has a limit on the number of notices of motion. In Wyong, and I think Gosford, it was 2. But now we've got more councillors, and I'm sure that's the reason it was gone from 2 to 1. The issue is, as well, from my experience, that notice of motion put an immense burden on the staff. And you say, all right, well, that's what the staff are there from. Yes, that's true, but they're also there to do the core business of council. And if we have 10, 15 notices of motion coming up to every council meeting, that will be the business of council. You won't get anything else much done, and it'll be a debacle, quite frankly. It's not broken. Nobody's saying they haven't been able to put up a notice of motion. If it's not broken, don't try and fix it.
Councillor, just confirming that the PIA doesn't specifically refer to the code of meeting practice. What it does refer to, and this may be related to cases where notices of motion reallocate budget or workload, is that council must implement the adopted budget and operations plan, and any significant changes must be agreed by the Deputy Secretary of the OLG. So this means that if there's any significant budgetary or workload impacts as a result of a notice of motion that would impact the budget, that we would then deal with through a quarterly review, and then that goes through to the OLG. Bearing in mind, however, that we're in a state at the moment where we're currently developing next year's budgets, any resolutions of council in the meantime will be implemented into that budget, and that is the way that we would cover off on any of those workload or budgetary impacts from notices of motion.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor.
Just a question to the mover. Given that we've now learned that this has to go out after it's been amended for consultation, would it be amenable to you to add a addendum point 4, just dealing with the questions on notice and just inserting a clause of having 2 questions on notice per councillor per meeting? No, on questions of notice rather than notice of motions, because if we've got to send it out every time we make a change to this, it'd be better to do it together rather than have another nom about the quants.
Since I noticed to 2 as an item 4 on the motion. Is that what you're moving?
Yeah, that's it. So two questions on notice per meeting.
Me?
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading.
I think last meeting we took about 20 minutes to actually debate how long speeches could be.
Hey, Councillor Lamont is right. He got a question.
Procedural motion. You can do that, but normally you got a rule on that.
Okay, ask your question.
Thank you. Well, it's, I think we, as councillors, have to consider maybe going to 2 meetings if we really need to. And I think that might be a motivation to actually make the 1 meeting more efficient between us if people don't want 2 meetings. However, I think we've got a job to do. If there's motions and ideas to be put out on behalf of the community, we do them regardless of whether it's 1 meeting or 2 meeting. And maybe we should stop debating things like how long everyone can speak, because that did take about 20 to 25 minutes last meeting before we decided on that. And also the 5-minute adjournment that we asked for actually went for about 25 minutes anyway. So there's, close to 40 minutes there that was wasted last meeting. But I think we're here to do a job, and gagging us and restricting us from doing it is just wrong. Just ask the community what they expect. It's not adding extra to. I think last time was a bad example because we hadn't had a meeting for about 2 months. That also adds to it. But that's it. I just hope everyone supports it.
Councillor Neil, you want to finish? Close.
I will provide my right of reply, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an important illustration of our responsibility and our civic duties. If there is a matter we think is important the council to consider, we have an obligation, a duty and a responsibility to raise it. Some arbitrary limitation I don't think is appropriate in those circumstances. The great fear that Councillor Eaton seems to have, that if we're allowed to have more than 1 motion on notice, that we will be bringing up many of them and staying till very late meetings, I think is not borne out by the facts. We could have all put up a notice of motion for this meeting, and of course there was only 4 notices of motion, which shows that we are all reasonable people. We all understand that this is only an avenue for bringing forward important matters that the community has raised with you. So I commend the motion, and I suggest I adopt Councillor McGregor's proposition that Councillor Eaton, throw off your chains.
All right, all those in favour of the motion? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Neal, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Walsh. All those against? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Newland, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McWade, and Councillor Stanton. And I'll use my casting vote to vote against it as well. So
Really?
8-7, the motion was
You don't
lost.
trust
So the
yourselves.
meeting is finished at 8 o'clock.
That is just sad. That's sad, but